Good evening and welcome to Gravitas. I'm Palki Sharma Upadhyay. Let's get started.
Gravitas, co-presented by Skoda Superb, best in next class. Co-powered by Star Health Insurance, the health insurance specialist. Amstrad, get real, get Amstrad.
What goes around comes around, and it's no different for Saudi Arabia. The kingdom that was home to 9/11 attackers is now on target of terror groups. 15 of the 19 Al-Qaeda terrorists involved in the 9/11 attacks were Saudi citizens, and now there have been 2 lone wolf attacks targeting Saudi Arabia. Last month, an ISIS spokesperson called for attacks on oil infrastructure in Saudi Arabia. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman has vowed to fight the ISIS with an iron fist. The question is, when and how did this turn happen? For years, Saudi Arabia has been accused of harboring and financing terrorists. At what point did they train their guns on Riyadh? On Gravitas tonight, we'll discuss. Also on the show, the countdown has begun. A vaccine rollout may now be a matter of weeks, but as always, conditions apply. We'll tell you all about it. The US presidential race may be over, but Trump and Biden are still competing to prove who is tougher on China. Barack Obama's memoirs feature Indian Congress leader Rahul Gandhi, and social media in India can't seem to get enough of it. And in Turkmenistan, a dog memorial is making headlines. We'll tell you why. But we begin as always with Gravitas Global Headlines.
India hit back strongly after Pakistan's unprovoked shelling following a foiled infiltration bid. Indian Army destroys several Pak bunkers along the line of control. Indian Army sources say 7 to 8 Pakistan Army soldiers, including Special Service commandos, have been killed. A suicide car bomb exploded at the western entry gate of the Afghan capital, killing at least 3 government security troops and injuring 4 others. Interior Ministry spokesman Tariq Aryan said the explosion targeted a government forces checkpoint near the gate. Footage from the Shusha region in Nagorno-Karabakh shows dozens of dead soldiers along the roadside. The area has been at the center of fighting between Armenian and Azeri forces. A ceasefire halted military action in and around Nagorno-Karabakh. Azerbaijan has said it captured Shusha on Sunday. The US government will be delaying the enforcement of a ban on TikTok. This is in compliance with a court order in favor of the Chinese-owned social media platform. According to Myanmar's official general election results, the ruling party of leader Aung San Suu Kyi has won enough parliamentary seats to form the next government. Police and protesters clashed and tear gas flooded Lima's streets to protest against the new interim government of President Manuel Merino. Demonstrators took to the streets for a 3rd consecutive day to show their dissent. Merino was sworn in as the new president on Tuesday after his predecessor, Martin Vizcarra, was voted out by lawmakers in Congress amid corruption allegations. France marked 5 years since 130 people were killed by Islamic State extremists who targeted the Bataclan concert hall, Paris cafes and the National Stadium. Prime Minister Jean Castex led other dignitaries at silent ceremonies at multiple sites targeted by coordinated attackers around the French capital on 13th November 2015. 39 people have lost their lives after Typhoon Vamco brought powerful winds and torrential rains to the capital Manila and nearby provinces, damaging tens of thousands of homes. Argentina's perfect start to the 2022 FIFA World Cup qualifiers is over after a 1-1 draw against Paraguay in Buenos Aires. The visitors led through Angel Romero's 21st minute penalty, but Argentina fought back, level from a corner headed in by Nicolas Gonzalez. Captain Lionel Messi then had a goal controversially ruled out early in the second half. The draw sees Argentina climb a point above Brazil at the top of the standings, having played an extra game. Women's 400 meters world champion Salwan Nasser faces a 2-year ban and the prospect of missing the Tokyo Olympics. The Athletics Integrity Unit has appealed against Nasser's exoneration last month for an anti-doping violation. The Nigeria-born Bahraini had missed 3 out-of-competition tests last year, triggering an automatic suspension, but was let off on a minor procedural violation from the doping inspector.
Tonight we'll tell you the story of a kingdom. One that was home to the most wanted terrorists in the world, one that has been accused of murdering a journalist in an embassy on foreign land, and one that has used petrodollars, according to some, to whitewash charges of terrorism and human rights abuse. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is now on a new list, a list of terror targets. It has suffered 2 lone wolf attacks in 3 days. Its crown prince, who is now trying to be the face of reform, has vowed to crush the Islamic State with an iron fist. For those who've not been watching Saudi Arabia closely, this may not add up. Tonight on Gravitas, we'll explain. Let's start with the latest, the terror attacks. The first one took place in, in Jeddah. It was a bomb blast. The second one took place in The Hague. It was at the Saudi embassy. A terrorist opened fire. Let me tell you about the second attack first. It happened yesterday, a day after a ceremony to commemorate World War I. At 6 a.m. local time, a gunman appeared. Reports say he fired 20 shots at the embassy building. There were no casualties, no injuries, but that does not take away from the severity of this incident. After all, it's an embassy that was fired at. Diplomatic missions are well-protected establishments the world over. And for someone to open fire on them is a big deal. Saudi Arabia has described the act as cowardly. Now let me tell you about the first attack. It took place on Wednesday, an explosion in Jeddah. This attack was much bigger. It was at a ceremony to commemorate the end of the First World War. The French consulate had organized this ceremony at a cemetery in Jeddah. Diplomats and representatives of France, Greece, Italy, the United Kingdom and the United States were all present. At this ceremony, an improvised explosive device was detonated. Reports say the bomb was hurled over the wall of the cemetery. There was an explosion, there was panic. We heard from an eyewitness. Listen to what he said.
The consul started his speech at around 8:15, and as soon as he finished, the explosion took place, which was tens of meters away from us. People panicked and rushed to leave the cemetery. I saw a soldier who had his face covered in blood. I asked other soldiers to take him to the hospital quickly. Although he was covered in blood, he was able to walk. The situation was complicated as people were shouting and wanting to leave from the same door. People were in a total state of panic.
The Islamic State has claimed responsibility for this attack. The agenda of the terrorists was clear. They struck 2 targets with 1 bomb, Saudi Arabia and France. They attacked the French ceremony against the cartoons of Prophet Muhammad and whatever the French president has been saying. And they carried out the attack in Saudi Arabia to send a signal to Riyadh. How did Saudi Arabia respond? It said it will fight back, as it should. It will fight back against terrorism in general and the Islamic State in particular. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman has vowed to strike at ISIS with an iron fist. He addressed the Shura Council after the attack. The Shura Council is the top government advisory body in Saudi Arabia. The Crown Prince said, and I'm quoting, "We will continue to confront any extremist behavior and ideas." It is still not clear how many people were behind this attack in Jeddah. It could have been a lone wolf. It could have been a group of terrorists working together. The investigation is on. But here's the thing. Wahhabism is the fountainhead of the Islamic State. The terrorist group was born out of the same ideology. It grew with money and assistance flowing out from the kingdom, according to reports. But that changed in 2015 when Saudi Arabia became a target of ISIS attacks. And since then, Saudi Arabia has declared the ISIS as the enemy. Back in October, an Islamic State spokesperson called for attacks on Saudi Arabia's oil pipelines and economic infrastructure. Our next report tells you more.
It began with a message. Almost a month ago, a recorded speech was sent to the Telegram group of the Islamic State. The voice was of Abu Hamza al-Muhajir, the spokesman of ISIS.
Targets are plenty. Start by hitting and destroying oil pipelines, factories and facilities which are the source of income of the tyrant government.
This was a declaration of a shadow war against Saudi Arabia. The trigger was a diplomatic truce. ISIS released that message after Riyadh decided to open Saudi airspace for Israel. With the UAE and Bahrain forging a diplomatic relationship with the Israelis, these moves were considered to be diplomatic wins for Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. And ISIS wanted to ruin Saudi Arabia's success because it considers Saudi Arabia as its enemy. ISIS propaganda shows its black flag flying over Mecca. ISIS terrorists have attacked Shia Muslim mosques in Saudi Arabia, targeting Saudi security officials. The terrorist group called the Saudi royal family slaves of the Crusaders and allies of the Jews. With every move, ISIS wants to challenge the legitimacy of the regime, so the kingdom classified the terror group as a top security threat. Saudi Arabia's response to take down ISIS was fierce. It began with restrictions on Saudi citizens to stop them from traveling abroad to support the group. According to a report in 2016, more than 1,600 ISIS supporters have been arrested, with the kingdom's security officials going into an overdrive to foil attacks. The Islamic Military Counter-Terrorism Coalition is a result of Riyadh's crackdown. This is a military alliance of 41 countries built by Saudi Arabia to conduct joint operations against ISIS. Pakistan's former army chief Rahil Sharif serves as the head of this alliance. But it's not been enough. Despite the crackdown, ISIS was able to build a considerable support base in Saudi Arabia. A study in 2015 found that 2,500 Saudi citizens joined ISIS as foreign fighters, making Saudi Arabia the second largest contributor. But after the losses in Syria, ISIS has become weak. It has lost its muscle, but retains channels to influence lone wolf attacks around the world. The recent attacks in Europe are proof. ISIS may not pose a direct threat to the Saudi regime now, but it has the power to fuel chaos in the kingdom and keep its shadow war going. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
To every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. Newton's third law of motion. You've read about it, and I'm not trying to give you a physics lesson. What I'm saying is that this law applies outside physics too. When you create trouble, you invite it home. When you back terror, terror strikes back. Saudi Arabia may be learning it the hard way. The Saudi embassy has been attacked. For years, it was Saudi Arabia that was accused of using its diplomatic missions to spread terror. Here's what happened in Bosnia in the year 2008. An ex-felon and former Al-Qaeda operative named Ali Ahmad Ali Hamad revealed something appalling. He said the Saudi High Commission for Aid in Bosnia had hired him and other Al-Qaeda members. They were supplied with vehicles and money during the Bosnian conflict. What for? To spread terror, to carry out attacks, he said. 2 years back, journalist Jamal Khashoggi was murdered allegedly inside the Saudi embassy building in Turkey, his body dismembered. Saudi Arabia has also reportedly fueled terror through charities. From the early 90s till the first half of 2006, a Saudi Arabia-based charity called the Muslim World League was supporting terror organizations. Documents later revealed the charity was largely run by members of the Saudi royal family. The United States has now branded its offshoot as a terror entity. In the year 2003, a senior U.S. Treasury official declared Saudi Arabia the quote-unquote epicenter of Al-Qaeda financing. According to one report submitted to the United Nations, Al-Qaeda received between $300 to $500 million in 10 years from 1992 to 2002. The report said Al-Qaeda got the money by quote-unquote abusing the pillar of Islam and taking advantage of the Saudi regulatory vacuum. Why just Al-Qaeda? Riyadh has also supported the Taliban, according to reports. In 1998, former Saudi intelligence chief Turki Al-Faisal sent a man to hand over a check for $1 billion riyals to a top Taliban official. What was this money for? Saudi donors and unregulated charities have been accused of financing terrorist groups for 38 years now. I'm not saying this. It is the US State Department. Saudi terror nexus is well documented, and now the world is being told every day how Saudi Arabia funded radical Islam in Europe. Saudi Arabia is home to Islam's holiest sites, the Mecca and the Medina. For years, Saudi Arabia has also enjoyed enormous influence over the Muslim world community. What has it done with this influence? Critics say Saudi Arabia has abused its position and given shelter to terrorists. For years, Riyadh has been told to drive them out. In 2017, US President Donald Trump reiterated this during his visit to the kingdom. In the run-up to Indonesia's elections in 2019, local media reported about the troubling expansion of Saudi-backed radicalism that was degrading the country's pluralism, they said. After the Easter attacks in Sri Lanka, there was a lot of discussion on how radicalism has created a breeding ground for extremism in Sri Lanka. Riyadh-sponsored terror has also struck the Philippines, Chechnya, Nigeria, Kosovo and the West Bank. And how can we forget the attacks of 9/11? Riyadh has been accused of funding hate in Europe. Today, its embassy there is under attack. Saudi Wahhabism shaped the Islamic State's worldview. And today, the Islamic State is striking Saudi cities. Late last month, a Saudi man was arrested after attacking and wounding a security guard at the French consulate in Jeddah. 2 days ago, a cemetery in the same city was attacked. The terrorist was targeting the French consul general. He ended up injuring at least one Saudi citizen. I said this yesterday, I'll say it again. Terror knows no borders. Saudi Arabia sympathized with terror, financed terror, and thought it was immune to terror. Hillary Clinton told Pakistan in 2011, you can't keep snakes in your backyard and expect them to only bite your neighbor. So here's my message to Saudi Arabia tonight. It's never too late to change course. The Crown Prince is talking about Vision 2030. He can use the clout in the Muslim world, convince countries like Pakistan to drop arms, drive terrorists out of the kingdom, forget Yemen, launch a war on terror, pull the plug on terror funding, disarm terrorists, and shut down charities that back radicalism. Let's talk about the end of this pandemic. Vaccines. It may just be a matter of weeks now. That's what vaccine makers have said. They will roll out the first supplies in the next few weeks. But you're very unlikely to get one, and this could be a good thing. The new vaccines could have side effects. Pfizer shot expectations up with a big claim recently. It said its vaccine is 90% effective. But volunteers who took the vaccine are experiencing side effects. Some of them have spoken to the media. Here is how they describe their experience. Those who got it felt muscle pain, headaches. Some even had a fever. Different volunteers had different experiences. One said the side effects were like a severe hangover. Another claimed the side effects got much worse after the second shot. Remember, the Pfizer vaccine is administered in 2 stages. The second shot is given 3 weeks after the first. It's called the booster shot. One volunteer said their symptoms disappeared quickly. BioNTech, the firm that is working on the Pfizer vaccine, remains confident. They are in dialogue with various governments for approvals.
We are at the moment in a close dialogue with regulators around the world. We are talking to the European Medicinal Agency. We are talking to the FDA. We are talking to Canadian Health, to the UK authorities, to the Chinese authorities, to Japanese authorities. And first authorizations or conditional approvals could happen in the United States or in Europe. But the earliest time point for starting supplying vaccine will most likely not before mid of December. And this mid of December will also not mean that the situation will dramatically change. So we have to expect that this will be really a difficult winter. It will become worse before it gets better. So we will feel the first reliefs in the starting with March, April next year, and ideally we would have a better controlled situation in mid of next year.
So what's the takeaway for you? Is the Pfizer vaccine unsafe? Will these vaccines make you sick? The answer to these questions is a resounding no. Some symptoms like fever and muscle pain are common. Even some flu vaccines cause this. These are not serious side effects. They're just unpleasant. You may feel like you're down with the flu for a few days, but they do not pose a threat to your life, and not everyone may feel these side effects. Just like medicines, even new vaccines can have acceptable side effects, and this is just the first round of vaccines. With time, the vaccines are expected to get better. They may just work with 1 shot and not 2, and they may even come without side effects. Knowing about the side effects is necessary, as these vaccines may not be suitable for everyone, especially for those who have pre-existing health conditions. Now let's tell you where we stand in terms of how soon we'll get a vaccine, who stands where, when will each country get a vaccine, and how close are we to getting one. Let's bring up for you our vaccine tracker. First, we have the Astrazeneca Oxford vaccine. It is being tested on the age group of 18 to 55. It was given in 1 or 2 doses in trials. The second dose is 28 days after the first one. The vaccine has a moderate immune response. Moderate means the vaccine has a response that is equal to a natural infection. The vaccine has mild side effects. Next, we have the Sputnik 5. Developed in Russia, it is being tested on people within the age group of 18 to 60. This is a 2-dose vaccine. The second shot is given 21 days after the first one with a moderate immune response and mild side effects. Next, we have the Novavax vaccine, an American vaccine, another 2-shot vaccine given. The second shot is given 21 days after the first one. It was tested on the age group of 18 to 59. And so far, it has a high immune response, which means strong protection, and the side effects are said to be mild. And finally, we have the Pfizer vaccine. It is being developed by an American company with help from German researchers. It is being tested on age groups from 12 to 55, as well as people above 55 years of age. It is given in 2 doses. The second shot is given 21 days after the first one. The Pfizer vaccine is the only vaccine to report an efficacy rate of 90%. So it is a strong immune response. Some volunteers, as we told you, have reported side effects. The company has not noticed any serious side effects in its trials. India could have access to all 4 of these vaccines. The suppliers of 3 candidates have secured deals with an Indian counterpart to supply the vaccine here. While the government of India is in talks with Pfizer, New Delhi has already placed advanced orders for the Oxford and Sputnik 5 vaccines. A vaccine will be rolled out in India only after it is given regulatory approvals. How will India do it? It could give the vaccine candidates emergency authorization. When the first vaccines are ready, countries plan to authorize and control their use using emergency authorization. Because this is an emergency, we are still in the middle of a pandemic. Around the world, drug regulators control which medicines can enter the market. In the United States, it is the Food and Drug Administration. In India, it is the Central Drug Standard Control Organization. They decide which medicines or vaccines can enter the market. Usually, they need a large amount of data to approve a drug. The process can go on for years. But we are in the middle of a pandemic, as I said, so regulators can choose to approve new drugs with limited data. This is not a full approval of a drug. It is permission for emergency use with several terms and conditions attached. Like we reported earlier this week, the health workers and the most vulnerable population is likely to get the vaccine first. They'll be allowed to take it under the same emergency authorization, something that China has misused by injecting thousands with unapproved vaccines. According to one claim last month, China has injected 60,000 people so far. And since China is never transparent with data, there could be more who could have been given these shots. Beijing gave emergency authorization to 2 vaccines. No one knows how they work. No one knows how effective they are and whether these people were tracked for side effects after being given the shots. This is the situation that countries like India should avoid when a promising vaccine does become available for them to put their money on. We are still waiting. Meanwhile, here's someone who's upset with the way things are going. Elon Musk. Has he tested positive for the Wuhan virus? We don't know. The strange thing is, even he doesn't know. The entrepreneur took 4 tests for the Wuhan virus. 2 came back positive and 2 came negative. So Musk shared the results on social media. What followed was panic and speculation. Here's a report.
Something extremely bogus is going on. That's how Elon Musk assessed the testing situation in America. The billionaire entrepreneur says he is down with the cold, so he decided to get a test for the Wuhan virus. The horror that followed left many perplexed. Musk's sample was taken not once, but 4 times. 2 reports came back negative, but 2 tests were positive. Musk vented on Twitter. Was tested for COVID 4 times today. 2 tests came back negative. 2 came back positive. Same machine, same test, same nurse. What went wrong? Few reports suggest the testing kits could be unreliable. Musk said he took antigen tests made by Becton, Dickinson and Company, one of the many rapid tests in the American market. While these kits give the result early, medical experts say they are unreliable. Doctors instead prefer the PCR tests, where samples are collected from the nose and throat of the patients. Musk could have avoided the confusion by just taking the PCR test first, but instead he chose to speculate more on Twitter. When one user asked, "Are false positives driving up the cases in America?" Musk replied, "If it's happening to me, it's happening to others." Another tweet, "Revenues from tests are likely not bogus and very consistent." Musk replied back with an "exactly." These tweets are hardly the first time that Elon Musk has questioned the science behind the virus or the response to it. In March, he had called the panic around the pandemic dumb. In the same month, he had predicted that America will have 0 cases of the Wuhan virus by April. As of today, the United States has more than 10.6 million cases, with over 240,000 deaths, making it the worst affected country in the world. It is this cavalier meeting habit that cost Musk the chairmanship of Tesla. In 2018, he announced that he could take the company private by buying back publicly listed shares at $420 each. The buyback didn't happen, but America's Securities and Exchange Commission came down hard on Musk, asking him to step aside as chairman for 3 years, with a fine of $20 million. Seems like Musk hasn't taken any lessons. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Former US President Barack Obama is back in the news. He's publishing a book on his time in the White House. A few excerpts have been released. And from what we can gather, Obama is set to spill the beans on his meetings with foreign leaders, including a few from India. Here's more.
Obama is publishing a memoir called A Promised Land. It features two Indian leaders prominently. One is Congress leader Rahul Gandhi. He has a nervous, unformed quality about him, as if he were a student who'd done the coursework and was eager to impress the teacher, but deep down lacked either the aptitude or the passion to master the subject. Scathing words from the former president. Obama also writes about Congress President Sonia Gandhi. Not about her style of politics or personality, but about her looks. The New York Times review sums it up like this. We are told of the handsomeness of men like Charlie Crist and Rahm Emanuel, but not the beauty of women, except for one or two instances, as in the case of Sonia Gandhi. The former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh is described as having a kind of impassive integrity. This memoir details Obama's meetings with multiple world leaders. Like Russian President Vladimir Putin, he's been compared to a street-smart ward boss, basically a leader who has absolute control over everything. Physically, he says, Putin was unremarkable. An interesting anecdote is about former Chinese President Hu Jintao. He supposedly droned on and on from stacks of papers during bilateral meets. Obama writes that they could have just exchanged the papers instead. It would have saved a lot of time. He also writes about his deputy, now the president-elect. Joe Biden is described as a decent, honest, and loyal man. But there is a mention of his famous temper. Obama says that Biden might get prickly if he is not given his due. No Obama memoir will be complete without the birther theory. He has his successor Donald Trump to thank for that. Trump sought to delegitimize Obama's presidency by claiming he was born in Kenya. There is a striking similarity to what is happening with the elections right now.
Internet and social media, whether it's suggesting that there were illegalities or fraudulent votes cast in this election, when everybody who's looked at it objectively says that Joe Biden has clearly won. Whether, as I write about in the book, at the end of the book, Donald Trump suggests that I wasn't born in the United States despite the existence of birth certificates and birth announcements.
In 2009, when Obama was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, he reacted with, "For what?" a statement that rang true when he started pounding Libya with airstrikes. The memoir is set to be released in two parts. The first ends with him meeting the Navy SEALs before their Bin Laden mission. Not much of a cliffhanger, since we all know how that story ended. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
Let's look at what's happening in the United States. It's been 10 days since Americans cast their vote, 6 days since the election was called in favor of Joe Biden. He is now America's president-elect, according to most Americans, but President Donald Trump is not ready to accept defeat. He has also put Biden's transition in limbo. There have been two big developments in the United States in the last 24 hours, and we'll go through both one by one. Development number one, Joe Biden has won the battleground state of Arizona. And number two, China has finally congratulated Joe Biden and Vice President-elect Kamala Harris on their election victory. Let's get started with Arizona. Joe Biden has made history again by becoming only the second Democratic presidential candidate to win Arizona in 7 decades. Only the second in 7 decades. The Arizona win takes Biden's electoral college tally to 290. Trump is at 217. Just a quick reminder, the winner needs to bag 270 electoral college votes. Biden's way ahead of the curve here. Joe Biden is also leading the popular vote by 5.3 million. That's 3.4 percentage points. Counting is still on in 2 states. Georgia has a deadline of the 20th of November. North Carolina needs to finish counting votes by the 24th of November. Biden is leading in Georgia right now. Trump is ahead in North Carolina. Now development number 2. Wishes pouring in for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris all the way from China. After refusing to acknowledge the election result for days, China has said that it respects the choice of American people.
We have been following the reaction to the US presidential election of both the United States and the international community. We respect the choice of the American people. We extend congratulations to Mr. Biden and Ms. Harris. Meanwhile, we understand that the results of the US election will be determined according to US laws and procedures.
China was one of the few countries that had not acknowledged a Biden win. Just in case you're wondering, Vladimir Putin's Russia, Kim Jong-un's North Korea and Jair Bolsonaro's Brazil are also on that list. They have still not wished Biden and Harris. Russia said that it could wait for the official election result. North Korea and Brazil have said no such thing. But instead of waiting on these countries to wish the president-elect, here's something else that will be more interesting to watch out for. How do you think Donald Trump will react to China wishing Joe Biden on his win? That's interesting because the US presidential election might be over, but there's still a competition on between Joe Biden and Donald Trump when it comes to China. Both are trying to show Americans that they are the perfect fit to take on Beijing. Here's a report.
There is an ongoing fight between US President Donald Trump and President-elect Joe Biden. It's not just over the election result. Both Trump and Biden are competing to show America that they are the best fit to take on China.
Who seeks not to divide, but unify.
There is a lot at stake and an ever-growing bipartisan dislike for Beijing. Both Democrats and Republicans had China on their election manifesto. Donald Trump claimed Biden would be soft on China. And with just 2 months left in the White House, Trump is working on his "I told you so" moment. Trump has signed an executive order banning Americans from investing in Chinese firms that support the Chinese army. Trump's executive order listed 31 companies. Americans investing in these companies have a year to divest. The order will come into effect on the 11th of January. That's Trump trying to raise the bar from Biden. What does the president-elect have in mind? Joe Biden is not behind in the race, though he's clearly said the Wuhan virus pandemic would be his priority. He has shown his intent in keeping the pressure on China alive. Joe Biden called on Quad allies. His message to them was to secure the Indo-Pacific. Previously, Biden told Americans that democracy and human rights would be central to U.S. foreign policy. Read, Hong Kong and Uyghurs will not be ignored in the American foreign policy. Biden knows he is inheriting a $345 billion trade deficit with China. Knows the White House cannot let China undermine America's economic, military, and geopolitical strength. But Trump is bent on proving the American mandate was stolen, the election was a fraud, and that Biden will let his voters down. Whatever happens to the election, the news for China is unlikely to improve. Bureau Report, WION. World is one.
The war in Ethiopia has spiraled into a massive humanitarian crisis. Hundreds have been killed, many more displaced. Talks appear to be the only way out, the only way to avoid more bloodshed. But both sides remain defiant. Tigray's regional leadership is unwilling to surrender, and the Prime Minister of Ethiopia is riding high on recent military gains.
War is the epitome of fail for all involved. I know because I have been there and back.
War is the epitome of hell. That was Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed after receiving the Nobel Peace Prize last year. Today, he is a wartime leader, marching his troops into his own country. On Thursday, Ahmed claimed a major victory. His forces captured Western Tigray, but at a high cost. The ethnic fault lines have re-emerged. There are reports of a massacre. Hundreds of civilians hacked to death by forces loyal to the regional leadership. If confirmed, this would amount to war crimes. Abiy Ahmed has promised a swift end to the fighting, a return to normalcy in no time. He has named a new local leader to oversee the transition.
We are confident that in a relatively short period of time, we will accomplish our objectives and create a conducive environment for life to return to normalcy for our citizens in Tigray.
But this is easier said than done. Tigray is a battle-hardy province. Its leader has vowed to fight till the end. Although he is putting up a brave front, the Prime Minister too is buckling down for the long haul.
The government itself has not really accessed all the areas. I mean, we are expecting that the government, once it announces that it is in the capital city or the capital of the area called Mekelle, then that's what people would say it has really accessed up to the core of the area. So far it has not reached Mekelle. It has not even, annexed other areas within the Tigray region, just the western region that the Prime Minister has said. And mainly because the government has admitted that communication channels are being controlled by the leadership in the north.
In Addis Ababa, the government launched a civilian blood drive. Hundreds turned up to donate. The war is popular among non-Tigrayans, but casualties are mounting. A long conflict could destabilize not just Ethiopia, but the larger Horn of Africa region. In the early stages, Abiy claimed his feud was with Tigray's ruling party and not its people. But that's becoming increasingly hard to believe. On Friday, Ethiopian police visited a UN office in Amhara. They wanted a list of Tigrayan people working there. That's not all. A Tigrayan official at the African Union was also fired. The order came directly from Ethiopia's defense minister. The reason? Alleged disloyalty. The fighting in Tigray has displaced more than 14,000 people. Among them are thousands of minors. They are fleeing en masse to neighboring Sudan. But the country does not have the resources to host these many people. The only way Ethiopia can avoid more bloodshed is if PM Abiy relents. If he agrees to talks with Tigray's leadership. The 2019 Abiy would have wanted talks. All he needs to do is listen to his own advice. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Turkmenistan has a new attraction, a giant dog statue. It's located right in the middle of the capital and it is coated with gold. This might appear strange to you, but for most people in this country, strange has been the norm, all thanks to their president.
There's one thing you need to know about Turkmenistan. They love their animals, especially their dogs and horses. Don't believe us? Take a look. This is Turkmenistan's latest statue. It was unveiled in a large ceremony with much fanfare. It's a gilded dog, a local breed called Alabay. Turkmenistan's president, Gurbanguly Berdimuhamedov, absolutely adores them. He has written an entire book about the breed. Back in 2017, he gifted one to Russian President Vladimir Putin. Dogs and horses are a source of national pride here. Herding is the primary occupation. This particular breed, the Alabai, is known as the wolf crusher. It is perfectly suited to defending cattle. As for the Gilded Statue, that can be attributed to the president's penchant for drama. The dog statue joins a cityscape that is already dotted with statues, literally dozens of them, including one of the president himself on a golden horse. It may all seem very farcical from the outside, but Turkmenistan's reality is quite different. Berdimuhamedov has been in power since 2007. Elections are just a formality here. The gilded statues are meant to divert attention from years of misrule. Bureau Report, WION. World is One.
With that, it's a wrap. We're leaving you with Gravitas images as always. Have a good weekend and a very happy Diwali to all of you. See you on Monday.
Disconnect the room, please.